They tell you the greater good is a light, a guiding star that burns away the shadows of a chaotic universe. They speak of the Tao Va as if it were a natural law, as inevitable as gravity and as nurturing as a parent's touch. But looking back from the precipice of my own soul, I see it for what it truly is. A gilded cage, its bars forged not from iron, but from the very thoughts they plant in our minds. I once thrived in that cage. I found comfort in the immaculate geometry of our formations and the sterile grace of our cities. I believed that every pulse of my heart was a rhythmic tribute to a collective destiny. My name is Shazwi Tvar. I was a son of the fire caste, a blade in the hands of the Empire, forged through generations of selective breeding and absolute discipline. I have burned civilizations to make room for perfection. I have offered the hand of friendship with a hidden dagger at the ready, convinced that the blood I spilled was merely the price of a more harmonious future. All of that began to unravel on Corvesa. Corvesa was a human world, a scarred and soot-stained mining rock that choked beneath a gray chemical sky. To us, it was a tragedy waiting to be corrected, a chaotic sprawl of hab blocks and screaming machinery that needed the order of the Tao. We descended during the height of the Fifth Sphere expansion. I remember the sensation of the atmospheric entry, the hull of our Orca transport vibrating with a violence that mirrored my own internal eagerness. Around me, my fire team sat like statues, their breathing synchronized, their pulse rifles gleaming under the tactical lights. We were a single organism, or so I believed. When the ramp dropped, the stench hit me first, the acrid tang of unfiltered industrial runoff and the heavy, humid smell of unwashed human masses. It was repulsive, yet fascinating. We moved into the residential districts of the primary industrial hub, a maze of prefabricated steel and desperation. My commander, Shaz El Kais, directed us with the clinical efficiency of a master strategist. Our goal was compliance. We were to be the shepherds of these lost primitive souls, bringing them into the fold whether they understood the blessing or not. The turning point was the arrival of ethereal Aunta Kas. He didn't walk, he glided, surrounded by a retinue of water-caste diplomats whose smiles were as sharp as their logic. I had seen ethereals before, but never this close. As he entered the command post, a wave of profound, unnatural serenity washed over the room. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a physical weight. The tension in my shoulders vanished, the questions I didn't even know I had, about the necessity of this conquest, about the lives we were uprooting, were silenced instantly. My mind became a lake of still water, reflecting only the ethereal's will. I felt a surge of love so intense it made my chest ache. I would have died for him in that moment, not out of duty, but out of a desperate, terrifying adoration. But later, in the cold silence of the barracks, the calm began to ebb, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste. A few days into the occupation, I was tasked with overseeing a data extraction site. There, I met an Earth-caste technician named El Su. He was older, his hands stained with the grease of 1,000 machines. He didn't look at me with the usual deference. He looked at me with fear. "The records are wrong, Shazwi," he whispered when the drones weren't hovering nearby. "The humans, they didn't just hide their military codes, they hid their history, and our sensors are deleting the gaps before we can even map them. Why hide what the enemy was if we are meant to enlighten them?" I silenced him with a harsh reprimand, citing the Tau Va protocols. But the seed was planted. Why was the truth being curated? The fracture deepened during a patrol through the ruins of a collapsed hab block. A human child, no more than 6 cycles old, crawled out from underneath the rubble. My team raised their rifles, the targeting lasers painting red dots on her ragged clothes. I signaled for them to hold. She didn't cry. She didn't run. She walked towards my XV-8 crisis suit, a tiny figure against a mountain of white armored technology. She reached out and pressed something in the joint of my knee plating. It was a small, crude pendant, 2 heads of an eagle, worn smooth with grime and grip. "For the giant," she whispered in broken Gothic. "He protects." I should have crushed it. I should have reported the Xenotech relic for destruction. Instead, when we moved on, I reached down and retrieved it. The metal was cold, smelling of salt and old blood. In that small, worthless object, I felt a spark of something the ethereals never spoke of, a will that didn't need a collective to exist. I tucked it into a hidden compartment of my suit, a small, jagged piece of treason resting against my heart. I didn't know then that this trinket would be the key that unlocked the door to my own madness, or perhaps, for the first time in my life, my sanity.
The humid mists of Corvace's southern highlands clung to my battlesuit like a shroud. This was the punitive expedition, a term the Watercast used to sanitize the act of hunting down those who refused the gift of integration. The terrain was a jagged nightmare of basalt ridges and suffocating greenery, a place where our long-range superiority was strangled by the geography. My team moved in a staggered formation, our sensors fighting through the atmospheric interference. In my cockpit, the hum of the XV-8 was a familiar heartbeat, yet I felt a strange dissonance. The human pendant I had hidden beneath my internal sensor array seemed to vibrate with every step, a secret weight that pulled at my focus. Since the arrival of the ethereal, a fog had settled over the minds of my brothers. They moved with a terrifying, blank-eyed certainty. But for me, the fog was lifting, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged clarity that felt like a fever. "Shasui Tavar, maintain designated interval," the voice of Shas-El Kais crackled over the Vox. It was flat, devoid of the tactical dynamism he was known for. He sounded like a recording, a puppet speaking through a speaker. We reached the maw of the valley, a deep depression between 2 sheer cliffs. It was a tactical death trap. Every fiber of my training screamed at me to halt, to send drone scouts into the high canopy. But the orders from the command transport, where the Watercast emissary Poro Dalith Mayan sat beside our commander, were absolute. We were to advance into the center of the kill zone. "Command, I report a high probability of an ambush on the western ridge," I transmitted, my voice tight, requesting permission to divert and secure high ground. "Negative, Shasui," the reply came instantly, but it wasn't Kai's. It was the smooth, melodic voice of the Watercast emissary. "Strategic analysis confirms the insurgents have retreated to the eastern sector. You are to suppress coordinate 7 Alpha, direct all fire to the eastern forest." I looked at my tactical display. Coordinate 7 Alpha were a dense thicket of trees on the eastern slope. My thermal sensors showed nothing, no heat signatures, no movement, not even the flutter of local avian life. It was a ghost target. Then I saw it. On the western ridge, the one we were being told to ignore, a flicker of motion. I zoomed my optics, filtering through the mist. There,
Human soldiers, dressed in the drab greens and browns of the local militia, were hauling heavy las cannons into firing positions. They were silent, disciplined, and perfectly positioned to rake our column from the flank. "Targeting error. Enemy forces confirmed on the western ridge," I shouted over the open channel. "All units, pivot, engage the western slope." The response was silence. Then the valley erupted, not from the humans, but from us. Dozens of pulse rifles and rail rifles unleashed a devastating barrage on the empty eastern trees. My team, my own brothers, were obediently incinerating wood and stone, ignoring the actual threat that was currently leveling its weapons at our exposed backs. "Fire on the west!" I screamed, but the vox was suddenly filled with a low-frequency sound, a soothing, rhythmic sound that made my vision swim. It was the same sensation I had felt in the presence of the ethereal, a command to stop thinking, a command to obey the perfect plan. I resisted. I bit my tongue until the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, using the pain to anchor my mind. I broke formation. My suit's jetpacks flared blue as I pivoted toward the western ridge alone. I locked on to the human heavy weapon teams and unleashed my burst cannon. The forest floor on the west exploded in sparks and screams. I saw the humans scramble, their ambush broken by my sudden intervention. "Cease fire, Shasui Tavar," Shas-el-Kai's voice finally broke through, but it was filled with a cold, robotic fury. "You are compromising the harmony of the strike. Power down your systems immediately." "They were going to kill us all," I yelled, even as I dodged a last boat that melted the sensor pod on my shoulder. "Look at your sensors. The east is empty." "The ethereals have dictated the path of this victory. To see a different path is to be broken. Security team, detain the Shasui." I stood frozen as 4 XV-8s, my own comrades, turned their weapons away from the enemy and pointed them at me. I could have fought. I could have burned them all, but the horror of it paralyzed me. They didn't care about the humans. They didn't care about the tactical reality. They cared only for the geometry of purpose. I was stripped of my suit before the smoke had even cleared from the valley. They led me back to the forward base in shackles, my bare feet dragging through the Corvasan mud. I was tossed into a windowless cell, the air thick with the smell of ozone and disinfectant. Hours passed, or perhaps days. The door hissed open, and the water-caste emissary, Mayan, stepped in. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like a sculptor looking at a cracked piece of marble. In his hand, he held the human Aquila pendant they had found in my suit. "Do you know what this is, Tavar? It is a symptom. You are suffering from neural degradation. It is a rare, tragic condition where the mind begins to reject the guidance of the Tao Va. You think you are seeing truth, but you are merely experiencing a malfunction of your social instincts." "I saw the enemy, Mayan. My malfunctioning eyes saved the column," I spat. Mayan smiled, a thin, bloodless curve of the lips. "Efficiency is secondary to unity. A victory won through discord is a defeat for the greater good. But do not worry, we have a cure for your independence. A specialized facility awaits you. We will peel back the layers of your doubt until only the harmony remains." He leaned in closer, and I felt that terrifying, sweet-smelling aura again. "Tell me, Shasui, when you held this trinket, did you hear the Emperor's voice? Or was it just the sound of your own soul screaming as it died?" He left me there, the lights dimming to a rhythmic blue pulse. I sat in the dark, and for the first time I realized that the humans weren't the ones being conquered on Corvasa. We were. I looked at the shadow on the wall, and it didn't look like a warrior. It looked like a ghost, and in the silence I heard a sound that shouldn't have been there, a faint rhythmic scratching coming from inside the walls of my cell.
The scratching in the walls hadn't been a hallucination. It was the sound of a system failing under the weight of its own lies. When the door to my cell finally hissed open the next morning, it wasn't the medical transport team that entered, but a single, harried-looking Earthcast worker. He didn't speak. He simply fumbled with my shackles, his hands trembling so violently that the magnetic locks sparked. He left the door ajar and vanished into the steam-filled maintenance corridor without a word. I didn't ask why. In the Empire, sometimes silence is the only form of mercy left. I moved through the base like a ghost in the machine. My Firecast training, once a tool for the Empire's expansion, was now the weapon I used to dismantle its security. I didn't head for the perimeter. I headed for the heart, the command data hub. If I was going to be hunted as a degenerate, I wanted to know exactly what was rotting inside me. The hub was a cathedral of flickering blue light and humming processors. I bypassed the primary terminals, using the encryption codes I'd memorized from watching the Watercast diplomats. I searched for neural degradation. I searched for on-ta-cas, but what I found was a file designated Project Hivevine. My breath hitched. The data wasn't tactical, it was biological. It contained centuries of genetic mapping, focusing on the olfactory receptors of every Tau caste. We weren't just a society of specialists, we were a carefully tuned orchestra of chemical receptors. The ethereals didn't lead through wisdom or greater good philosophy. They led through a highly sophisticated airborne pheromone cocktail that bypassed the frontal lobe and acted directly on the primitive core of our brains. It was a drug, a biochemical leash. The neural degradation they accused me of wasn't a disease, it was an immunity. Somehow, the trauma of Corvesa, or perhaps the strange, ancient radiation of the human relic I carried, had caused my brain to stop responding to the ethereal scent. I wasn't a traitor, I was simply the only one in the room who wasn't high on the Empire's supply. I heard the heavy thud of combat boots in the hallway. No more time. I downloaded the raw data into a portable drive and fled toward the spaceport. The irony was suffocating. I was using the very efficiency they bred into me to escape the hive. I managed to slip into the cargo hold of an outbound Manta freighter, wedged between crates of re-education chemicals destined for the outer colonies. As the ship lurched into the sky, tearing through Corvesa's gray atmosphere, I felt a sudden, agonizing void in my mind. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. No shared purpose, no collective hum, just the cold mechanical vibration of the ship and the terrifying weight of my own thoughts. The transit lasted 17 days. 17 days of eating stolen nutrient paste and watching the stars through a hairline fracture in the cargo bay's outer seal. We didn't head for the core worlds. The ship's navigational computer, which I accessed via a maintenance port, showed a restricted vector, Exploration Sphere 912, a research outpost built into the hollowed-out husk of a dead moon. When the ship docked, the air that flooded the cargo hold was different. It didn't smell like the sterile, sweet air of the Empire. It smelled of iron,
old sweat, and something sharp like vinegar. I slipped out into the docking bay, sticking to the shadows behind a row of fuel cells. This wasn't a research station, it was a laboratory of horrors. Through the reinforced glass of the observation decks, I saw them, Tau from every caste, strapped into chairs, their eyes rolled back in their heads. They weren't being treated, they were being calibrated. Technicians in hazmat suits moved between them, injecting glowing green fluids into their neck glands. Subject 412 shows a 12% increase in pheromone receptivity. Increase the dosage. We must ensure the new strain of Tau Va is absolute. A hand clamped over my shoulder. It was too fast for me to react. I reached for my stolen pulse pistol, but my arm felt like lead. Standing before me was an ethereal, but not like Anta Cass. This one was old, his skin gray and translucent, his eyes milky with cataracts. He didn't radiate peace, he radiated a cold, predatory hunger. Shas Yui Taivar, the old creature wheezed, his voice sounding like dry parchment rubbing together. We have been waiting for a degenerate of your caliber. Your brain, it is a fascinating anomaly. Most resist the pheromone and die of neurological shock. But you thrived. You grew sharp. He leaned in, and the smell was overwhelming, a concentrated, oily stench of artificial command. My knees buckled, my mind shrieked in protest, but my body wanted to kneel. "Tell me, little warrior," he whispered, his long, spindly fingers tracing the line of my jaw. "Does it hurt to have a soul that belongs only to you? Don't worry. By the time we are finished, you won't even remember what the word I means." Behind him, a heavy door slid open, revealing a room filled with surgical saws and glowing neural probes. And in the center of the room, preserved in a stasis jar, was something that made my blood turn to ice. The severed, still beating...
The pain was not a sharp edge. It was a rhythmic, pulsing invasion. They had me strapped to a diagnostic slab in the heart of the moon base, my limbs locked in magnetic restraints that hummed with a low-frequency vibration designed to keep my muscles in a state of constant, exhausting tension. Thin, translucent needles, the whisper probes, were buried in the base of my skull, feeding data directly from my neurons into the station's logic engines. Aun Varesh, the ancient ethereal, stood over me. He had removed his ceremonial robes, revealing a spindly, fragile body covered in faint, glowing tattoos that pulsed in time with the station's core. He wasn't just a leader anymore. He was a technician of the soul. "You struggle, Shasui," he whispered, his voice echoing inside my head through the probes. "But why fight the tide? The greater good is a symphony. You are merely a discordant note. We aren't killing you, we are tuning you." I tried to spit, but my jaw was locked. I looked past him, into the shadows of the laboratory. In the adjacent containment cell, I saw a shape. It was a Tau, or what was left of one. His skin was a mottled, sickly violet, and his eyes had been replaced with optical sensors that whirred as they tracked my movement. "Fiora Ovarti?" I croaked. The name of the Earth-caste technician from Corvesa felt like ash on my tongue. The creature in the cell twitched. A mechanical voice, synthesized and cold, emanated from a speaker in its throat. "Shazui Twar, you survived the valley. Efficient, very efficient. He is our greatest success.
Unvaresh said, stroking a holographic display. Ovarti understood the patterns. He saw the truth you so desperately sought, so we gave him more truth than his organic brain could handle. Now he calculates the pheromone yields for the next generation of our species. He is a perfect servant, no doubt, no ego, only the Tauva. "You're monsters," I hissed. "Monsters?" The ethereal laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "We are the only thing standing between our race and the madness of the warp. The humans worship a corpse to stay sane. The orcs thrive on slaughter. We offer a third way, peace through biological certainty. But the old strains are weakening, Tvar. The neural degradation is spreading. Corvesa was a testing ground. We allowed the humans to resist. We allowed the ambush." My heart hammered against my ribs. You sacrificed the column?" "We needed to see which of our warriors would break the chemical leash when faced with impossible odds," he explained calmly. "You didn't just break it, you forged a new path. That little human girl, the one with the pendant, she was a psyker, a blank child we harvested from a black ship. Her presence dampened the pheromone field. We wanted to see if your Tau Firecast spirit could survive without us, and you did." The betrayal was a physical blow. The child, the ambush, the awakening, it was all a laboratory experiment. My freedom was just a data point on a watercast spreadsheet. Ovarti's mechanical eyes flared red. "The data is incomplete," the cyborg technician rasped. "The subject still possesses hope." Unvaresh nodded. "Correct. Let us remove that last impurity." He activated a secondary array. I felt a surge of cold fire pour into my spine. My memories of Corvesa, the faces of my team, the smell of the human world, they began to dissolve, pulled away by the probes. I tried to hold on to the image of the Aquila, but it was slipping, turning into gray mist. Suddenly, the station shuddered. A deep tectonic groan vibrated through the floorboards. The lights flickered, shifting from the sterile blue of the Tau to a violent, bloody red. "What is that?" the ethereal demanded, spinning toward the command console. "System breach," Ovarti's voice skipped. "External influence, not Tau, not human, something older." A scream echoed through the corridor outside, a sound so primal and full of agony that it bypassed my conditioning and struck straight at my survival instinct. It wasn't the sound of a warrior dying, it was the sound of something hungry. Unvaresh's composure shattered. He looked at the door, his gray skin turning translucent white. He reached for a control to terminate my life support, but his hand froze. In the reflection of the glass observation tank, I saw it. A shadow was moving in the corner of the room, tall and spindly, with too many joints. It didn't have a face, only a void where light went to die. The ethereal's perfect biochemical shield meant nothing to this thing. "The greater good," the shadow whispered, a voice that sounded like 1,000 dead civilizations speaking at once, "is a very small lie." The needles in my skull suddenly reversed their flow. Instead of taking my memories, they began to pump something else in. Visions of a galaxy on fire, of gods made of gold and iron.
The moon base did not just fail, it screamed. silent. The sound of tearing metal and the high-pitched whine of collapsing void shields created a symphony of ruin. As the red emergency lights pulsed like a dying heart, the shadow, that impossible, multi-jointed horror, stepped over the slumped body of the ancient ethereal. Unforgiving, the master of 1,000 souls, was nothing but a heap of withered blue flesh, his pheromone-drenched authority useless against a creature that had no biology to subvert. The magnetic restraints holding me to the slab flickered and died. I fell to the floor, my muscles screaming as the blood finally rushed back into my cramped limbs. I didn't look at the ethereal, I looked at the shadow. It wasn't a physical thing, it was a hole in the universe, a tear through which the cold wind of the warp blew. It turned its non-face toward me, and for a second I saw a reflection of every world I had burned, every lie I had told myself in the name of the greater good. "Freedom," the voice echoed, not in the air, but in the marrow of my bones, "is a heavy burden, Shasui." I scrambled toward the control console, where Fiora Ovati, or what remained of him, was frantically plugging his data spikes into the emergency overrides. His optical sensors were spinning wildly. The ethereals, they didn't just want order. Ovati's mechanical voice crackled, breaking into a hysterical, digitized laugh. The pheromones, they act as a dampener, a shroud. Our souls were kept dim, quiet, so the things in the deep wouldn't notice us. But you, Tvar, you woke up. You became a beacon. I grabbed the data drive I had stolen earlier, my hands shaking. So the choice is to be a slave or to be prey? That's the greater good? "It is the only choice," a weak, melodic voice whispered. I turned. Unforgiving was still alive, his eyes milky and wide. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the ceiling, as if he could see through the moon's crust into the void beyond. "We forged the chains to keep you in the shallows, the fourth sphere expansion. They saw what happens when the shroud fails. They saw the god that follows the Tauva. We tried to save you from the truth by making you forget how to dream. Now the dream is here." The shadow lunged. It didn't strike the ethereal. It simply merged with him. I watched in frozen horror as Unforgiving's body began to stretch and invert, his screams turning into a rhythmic, pulsing static. The laboratory walls began to weep a thick black oil that smelled of old copper and ozone. "Go!" Ovati screamed, his synthesized voice reaching a crescendo. "The self-destruct is keyed to my life signs. I will hold the door. Take the ship in Bay 4. Tell them we are not alone." I didn't wait. I ran. I ran through corridors where Tau warriors stood like statues, their minds shattered by the sudden absence of the ethereal's control. Some were weeping, others were clawing at their own eyes, unable to cope with the influx of raw, unfiltered reality. I passed the observation tank where the human heart had been kept. It was now beating so violently that the glass was cracking, its pulses matching the rhythm of the shadow's laughter. I reached the hangar just as the moon's internal stabilizers began to buckle. A single razor shark fighter sat on the pad, its systems humming with a life of their own. I climbed into the cockpit, my fingers dancing over the familiar controls. As I ignited the engines and tore out of the airlock into the silent vacuum, the moon behind me erupted.
A silent, brilliant bloom of white fire consumed the research station, the ethereal, and the horror he invited. Now I am drifting. I have crossed the border of the expansion, hiding in the dark nebulae where the Empire's sensors cannot find me. I have the data drive. I have the truth. But as I sit here in the cockpit, looking at my reflection in the dark glass, I realize the neural degradation has reached the final stage. My eyes are no longer the deep, solid black of the Tau. A tiny, glowing spark of gold is burning in the center of my iris, and sometimes, when the ship is quiet, I hear the voice of the human child from Corvesa. She does not speak of the Emperor. She speaks of a door that I have opened, a door that cannot be closed. The greater good was a prison, it's true, but it was also a shield, and now that the